Good evening. So I'm going to tie a fly tonight. Um, I'm a little bit behind on my birthday flies. I try to do um, flies for my friends and family, kind of dedicated to them. And so a couple of weeks behind on this one. So Allie, my niece, had a birthday at the end of April, and big 21. So I thought I would tie her a fly. Doesn't have anything to do with 21, but has to do with something else that we are um, not really allowed to say, I guess. So I'll just say that the fly that I'm tying is called a princess pheasant-tail beadhead, and I will turn around and get started. So I've already got the hook set. This is out of the Eagle Claw Special. It's the small hook out of the three sizes. So I'm going to start with my thread base. I've just got some black unithread, 8/0. I'm not real picky about the threads that I use. I just buy a color and use it. Some people will choose different threads based on how the thread itself is made, whether it's made into a kind of a rounded shape or whether it can lay down flat. It can make a difference on the way the fly looks when it's done, whether the fly is bumpy or whether it's smooth. But I'm not really picky about that. So obviously I'm not picky because the kind of thread that I'm using, or the kind of hook that I'm using, I've got, this pack starts off with 150 hooks or something like that, and normally you can get 25 fly hooks for double the price of that pack. So anyway, so this is a pheasant-tail beadhead. So obviously you got the beadhead there, and then I've got some barbs from a pheasant-tail. I'm going to go ahead and tie that in. This is going to be the tail. And these things can have either really kind of a thin and long body, or that you can make it so that it sort of builds towards the head. I'm going to do one that builds towards the head. And the thing that makes this a princess instead of a prince nymph or beadhead is that I'm going to use a pink neck right behind that big gold bead. And anybody that knows Allee knows why it's going to be called princess. And it's not a bad thing. So it's actually a kind of cool thing. Sorry, I had that that pheasant tail a little bit long there, so I just backed it off. Only want it to be about as long as from the bead to the end of the body, the same to the end of the tail, roughly. So this is going to be a slightly different version. Typically on a pheasant tail you would tie that in there and then wrap this piece around, but I'm going to use peacock curl for that when it's time. But it's not time yet. One thing I want to remember to do is, so this bead is a tungsten bead and it can make the body pretty heavy, but in order to make this body a little thicker, like I was talking about down here at the head, I'm going to go with some lead wire, if it'll roll around like it's supposed to. It's going to be a problem for me here. Here we go. Let's do it like that. Take a few wraps And this stuff is, like I said, it's lead, so you can just take it and pinch it and break it off. Just make sure it lays smooth. And you can kind of slide that forward if it'll go. If not, it'll just give me more room for that pink. Typically, you can just slide that a little bit, but I wrapped it pretty tight. Maybe that'll go. Okay, there, we got it where I want it. So this tungsten beadhead has some space in the front. You can either fill that space with thread, or you can fill it with, like I just did with the lead here. And so I'm just going to wrap this thread in a little bit, just to kind of help hold that lead in place. I'm going to take wide turns there so that whenever I go around this way, the thread will stay on top of the lead instead of going down into the lead, because otherwise it just doesn't help. And then I've got a kind of a bump here that I'm just going to fill in, make it taper a little bit more. I'm not too worried about that. The fish don't care, but I do want to taper that some. And I apologize for the proximity to the camera with my thread there. So I just take more turns here close to the lead, and then less turns towards the tail. And you can see I'm starting to get that cone shape. And I'm going to come back down here a little bit further down the hook bend. I want that tail to come kind of down with the hook some. I'm going to tie in my wire. I've got some gold wire here, and you can do this with copper. You can take a piece of electrical wire and do it like that instead of this stuff. I just happen to have this on hand. And I'm tying this in on top of the hook. Make sure it stays on top. Depending on what kind of fly you're doing with that, also, if you're tying in the wire or the lead, sometimes you can tie it on one side of the hook. One piece on one side and one piece on the other side. And if you're trying to get a more flat profile, you can do that and then wrap your thread, and you'll have that more flat look, like some underwater worms might kind of have a more flat profile. And then next step in is the peacock herl. So this is kind of the when you have a peacock feather, the very top of that, where it usually has like the eye looking dot, this is the part going up that shaft of that feather, and it has this kind of iridescent look to it. And so you just tie this in just like you do everything else. That's the cool thing about flies. Basically, you just tie a bunch of pieces in, and then you wrap it forward, and then wrap the next one forward. And each one you wrap forward, you just tie it off. Wrap the next one, tie it off, and you just work your way towards the front. It's pretty easy. So you can see that I've got the tail coming down. Sorry for the shaking. Tail coming down, gold wire, peacock herl. If I didn't have the gold wire, I could take this string and make a loop, and I could twist it around this, and that would make basically 2 strands of the peacock and 1 strand of thread, or 2, however you want to do it. But when you twist it and then you wrap it, that thread kind of ties in with the peacock. But because I'm going over it with the wire, I don't have to have that extra support in case it breaks. Because if not, if it breaks, then it'll just be a piece of that, kind of like it is now. When you go to reel it in, if a fish hits it or something, you go to reel it in, you'll end up with a fly that has this piece sticking off of it. Then you just break it off, and then you don't have that part anymore. And then you take the hook home and retie it. If you're like me, you like to reuse hooks if they're not bad hooks. So I brought the thread forward a little bit here. I'm going to, actually I don't want to do that. Sometimes you can make it, no I am, because I'm using this dubbing. Okay, yeah, I forgot about that part. So yeah, here we go. So I'm just going to wrap this forward. I'm going to tie it off right there where my thread is. So I just wrap it, and this is called what they call touching turns. You wrap it forward so that it's touching up as far as you want it, and then just cross it with the thread. You can do 2 or 3 turns on that, and then some people will break it off, but then if it's not covered by the thread, it'll unravel, and then you have less to work with. So I hold the thread up out of the way with my one finger, and then snip it right there. And then I might come in with a couple of more turns just to make sure that's laid down and not bumpy on the bottom. Okay, then I'm going to go with this wire. I'm going to go backwards against this because I wrapped that one that way, the corkscrew, and so I'm going to go this way so that it crosses that corkscrew. I'm just going to get a couple of turns in, but you see it gets that nice flash in there that kind of ties in with the way the bead looks on the front. And then I'm just going to lay it like this and then make sure my thread crosses it so it holds it down. And if I was still, if I didn't have the lead here, or if I wanted to continue to build this up more, I could just take that wire, even if I cover it up, I could put it, wrap it towards the head and have it be, have it take part in building up that body. But as it is here, I'm just going to put my thumbnail against it and then swirl it around back and forth till it snaps off. Very similar to if you have a coat hanger and you twist back and forth and it breaks. It does the same thing. Okay, so there's that. Again, I've got some of that wire showing here where I just broke it off. So I'm wrapping it to cover it. Then I'm going to go with my dubbing. This is not necessary, but it's something I wanted to do on this one just to make it flash a little bit more. This is called Ice Dub in an olive brown color. I got this to make woolly boogers with, just to have some extra flash, and because I don't typically buy stuff like that. But I just cut a little slit in the end of the bag, and I'm just going to take just a very little bit, just something to make a little flash on the thread. And then I'm going to get my wax, my thread wax. This is actually bow wax, bowstring wax. But I'm just going to put a little coating on the thread here. Get that chunk off. But put a little coating on there. I'm going to take some dubbing. This is probably even a little bit too much, but you just twist it on. And as you twist it, it kind of sticks to that wax a little bit and lays down. And you always twist it the same direction until you get how much you want. And then I'll take my slack up off this thread. I'm just going to wrap this forward. And I could have also done this dubbing up to the head like I'm going to do, and then come back and covered it with the wire also to help protect it. But again, I'm not too worried about that. This is kind of for the look. Okay, so I got that. And yeah, see, that would have been good to have that wire come over that, because you can see I can just take that and kind of fluff it off, but whatevs. And then I'm going to take these, I've got some more pheasant-tail pieces. I'm going to take some on both sides. Got some more pieces just like the tail. I'm going to go right here and make sure these ends are together. See, I've got some different length there. Okay, let's... There. And so I'm just going to lay this on both sides of the of the bead and tie it in. So it'll give me kind of a wing on both sides, or legs, however you want to look at it. Snip that one off. And then do the same thing on the other side. I think I've got, yeah, about four strands of the barbs there. So I'll get 4 on this side as well. Come about the same length out. It's about right there. Just do a loose turn so I can still adjust it under the thread. Just make sure those are kind of the same distance out. Looks about right. A couple of turns. And you see I'm wrapping that right behind the bead. Get a few turns there. Okay, and then last step, I've got this. So I did a fly fairly recently that I was using this bright pink stuff that I found at Home Depot on a piece of my dull scissors. This stuff. I found it on a piece like this that you use to wrap around wood to hold it together. Small, like a 1x2 little boards. And it just so happened that one of the ones I found had this color mixed into it, so I grabbed a piece. And it's nice and bright. Now this light that I've got on is kind of a yellowy light, so it's not, doesn't look that bright. But let me show you, if I switch this, that it pops a little, or a lot more. But I like this dim light for tying. So I'm just going to take this and tie this in. I'm going to lay it downward like that. My dogs are going crazy for some reason. I have a beagle. I wonder if there's a possum or something out back. We've had that fairly recently. There's also cats nearby and all kinds of goodies. So I'm just going to take this and make a couple of turns. You see I've got kind of a gap in the thickness of the fly between where I tied the thread in and the head of the fly. I'm just going to take this and fill that gap some. Like that. So it kind of makes it look a little bit like a turtleneck. And then I'm going to just really pull on that and let it get down in that space behind the bead. And then get as close as this as I can. Snip that. There we go. Snip that pink off of there. A couple more turns to help finish it. Okay. Now I'm going to use my whip finisher. Specialized tool for this kind of tying. And I'm just going to lay that in. What that does is it takes that one thread and wraps it around itself, so it kind of locks it in. That might have been too many turns, but that's okay. If I do that, okay, cut this, and then I'll use some clear nail polish. The go-to. You can use Zap-A-Gap, you can use super glue. Some people use that stuff that dentists use that uses the UV light to harden it. So that's about it. So listen up so you can see all the way around. So you saw I had some little bit of fuzzies from that dubbing. The wire is another thing that would have helped that not be that way. But you know what? It's cool. I guarantee if you throw that in, a little perch or a little trout will see that and be all over it. So it's a pretty good looking fly. Allie's a special girl. She's amazing. She's going to go a long way in life. Great God-fearing, God-following young lady. She's amazing. And beautiful singer, beautiful girl. I've got a picture on my Facebook of me helping her catch a trout in Tennessee when they came to visit. She was probably in 3rd grade or something, maybe a little older, and it wasn't on a fly, but maybe one day. Anyway, so there's the Princess Beadhead, Pheasant-tail, something or other. Hope you enjoyed it. I've got a bunch of videos here. This is probably number 53, I think it is. You can either go back in my Facebook and look for them, or you can go to my YouTube. It's where I put them afterwards. After I tie them on Facebook, I copy them and put them on YouTube. And you can go to Quiet Man 28. You can search Quiet Man 28 and you can see my videos. They're just like this. I don't edit them. I just copy them and put them on. And most of them have pretty thorough explanations of how I tie the fly. And sometimes I repeat myself from one video to the next because that might be the only video you watch. And it might be the only time you get to hear how to do it. So I talk through it. So there it is. Hope you enjoy. Have a great day.